Alright, picking up where we left off. This is I think it's day 18, but we could be on 19 now. I'll post it. These are testimonies to the name, which is, of course, Psilocybin, by musicians. And the lyrics are really what's important. I've written them down here, but I won't quote them to you. You'll have to look them up yourself. My Vision, Amazing. This is by Seal. Crazy, Kiss from a Rose, Get It Together, Prayer for the Dying, Fly Like an Angel, Future Love Paradise, that particularly is good, Bring It On, Killer, Touch, State of Grace, Latest Craze, and Where There's Gold, and Heavenly. Stone Free, Blues in E, Quicksand. That one's about the occult societies that are trying to demolition our world, get us down to master and servant in a peasant paradigm. Not so cool. Le Mott, Deep Water. These are all by Seal. Immaculate. All these have references to the states of consciousness that one experiences through psilocybin, and particularly the byproduct, which is the word, or the logos. So, very rich. Kings of Leon, Closer. That's a cool song. It talks about being 2,000 years old, a reference to Christ. And you'll have to check it out yourself. Coldplay. I am a Coldplay fan, although Chris sometimes gets on my nerves. But he is a Christian, a follower of Christ, and he is an eater of the name. So he's proclaimed as much by putting the circumpunct out and saying never stop on his Instagram feed. Alright, we'll go through these quickly. Another sacrament writer is Sting. His Why Should I Cry For You is particularly telling. But this is where we want to get the rubber to the road, or the real meat of the story. The first-hand experiences with psilocybin. These are my experiences. I also have a fellow writer who is in here and follows up. But let's go over some of my experiences. The beginning. Alright, so the beginning was basically a set and setting of a friend's house, and we split an eighth of mushrooms, and we're watching something about the end of the world and the water world, and how, basically the ice caps are melting and there's not going to be any land, which is not a good set, really, but that's what it was. Then we headed up to the levee. We got out of the house and headed up to the levee. There were three of us. And we basically stood on the levee and looked out to the river, which was all wilderness around the river, and then to this man-made environment with electrical power plant material on the ground. So it was like we had to choose between man's world and God's world, and we all chose God's world, and that was pretty strong for us. So that was just a half an eighth. The Forest of the Mind, the Heart of Forgiveness. Okay, that one's just about going through the forest. It is good when you start using mushrooms to be in nature. It's not, you might go up to the heroic dose of 5 grams or even the 7-gram dose of the baptismal dose. But I would do it one ladder rung at a time. I would not jump from 2 grams up to 10 grams or 5 grams. I would be careful with it, because it is kind of slippery. This is the rediscovery of Soma. This is when I first found out that the original Soma was psilocybin. I took 7 grams up behind UCSC, up in the mountains at a friend's house. And basically, the main images that came to me were a train with a bright white light coming straight, like the tunnel of white light at the end of life, coming straight at me. and I was stuck on the train track, and I could not avoid that light. Now, of course, I think it was God's light, but at the time I didn't know. I just knew that I was going to be exposed to the light. I remember myself saying, Soma, which didn't come from me, so it was like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then I did my senior thesis. I did my college thesis on Soma after this journey, and you all saw the 3 Somas of India. The Amanita being the second, the Psilocybin being the first with the yogis that blued, and the Morning Glory, or Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, being the last. Magic carpet ride. Alright, so this was the second journey I did up in those mountains, and we were sitting on a carpet, and all these lions and tigers, and it was a regular circus of animals that were popping out of the carpet that you could see. The artists had wove into the carpets. So that's why we call them magic carpets, and the magic carpet ride is definitely something to do. I think if you're going to do this as a practitioner, you do want to invest in a nice oriental carpet to look at. The 2 shall become 1. This is a 7-gram journey that I did on a Saturday. Let's see what it's about. Oh, I know. I was a cigarette smoker, and it allowed me to cease smoking cigarettes. Basically, I was shown a vision of a tree, a black tree, a big shadow silhouette tree, which represented God, and then I was shown a field of grain, and then this black tar settled over the grain, and I was told when the sun comes up, the whole thing will catch on fire. It represented my cilia in my lungs, and that the fire would cause cancer. So I quit that night, and I have never gone back to cigarettes since. Alright, this is the story here. Palenque in the dark. I went down to Mexico to go to a conference on entheogens in Palenque, which is kind of northern, or maybe central Mexico, and actually closer to the southern border. And Terence McKenna was there, and I remember asking him, Terence, why do you only take 8 grams of mushrooms? Why don't you take more? And his answer was, well, more is not required. More doesn't do anything. It's not necessary. But since then we found out that higher doses do produce higher states of consciousness. You can't rush to it. You can't jump up to 20 grams easily, but you can work your way there. And if you do, the view is outstanding. A wolf in sheep's clothing. At the time, I was dealing with a Native American guy who was raised on a reservation. He was a black man, and he was kind of a hoaxer. He would come into the art store that I worked at and ask me to give him crayons and paper, basically buy supplies for him or steal supplies for him. And so this is about uncovering that guy and returning his book to him and saying thank you, but no thank you. And it was about the vision of knowing him as, he was a werewolf at the time in my visions, and God just unveiled him to me. So it's good for discovering the hearts of people. Bridge to healing of lower back. This is a vision that I had about 7 grams, and I was working at a feed store at the time, and my back had gone out, and I was going to lose the job if I didn't get back to work. So I took 7 grams of the flower, cubensis, dried, and I lay down, and I basically got a vision of a bridge being built in my lower back with drills and cement and steel, and they were just really working at that thing, and in the morning my back was healed. And I was told that, they were working on my back. The spirit. Temptation, okay. You'll have to read the book for that one. prophecy. Okay, that was an interesting one. The first thunderstorm, I think that one's worth telling you about. I was at my house in Aptos, California, and I took about 7 grams of mushrooms again, and I remember the statement of God, of Christ rather, saying, anything you ask for in my name, that I will do for you. And so I wanted to have a thunderstorm, and I've also done this with earthquake. I basically set out on the mushroom. Once it starts to kick in, I prayed, and then I was given directions on how to create a thunderstorm. I moved air from the mountains out over the sea, caused mist to rise from the sea, and a thunderstorm built up, and late that night came clapping over my house. I can't explain it as a statistical randomness because it's happened multiple times. So there's a science to it. The windstorm, very similar. Struggle for Christ. Alright, this is my friend's work here, his journeys. So we'll pick up tomorrow on another subject, and then we'll be wrapping the book up pretty soon. So sit back and enjoy the rest of it, and thank you for staying tuned.